What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, Mtg. We like it in Magic, and I know what you're thinking. This is not my Halloween costume of man from Portland. It's just a very cold night in Georgia. What is it, like 50 degrees outside? It's 31. It's actually cold. This is not a bit somehow. Huh. Well, anyway, despite all that, we got some hot Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers for you. We've only got like 33 cards left to look at in this set, so it looks like tomorrow probably going to be that common and uncommon dump where we sift through and find the best cards and all that, but we don't have to worry about it yet because they actually gave us some pretty good cards to look at today. A total of 20 in all, plus some that I want to look at from the Commander product towards the end of the video, if you'll allow me. If not, that's fine. I'm still going to do it. But that said, there's a lot of cards from the main set still to look after, so let's get to it. Now, we're going to start with a couple of cards from yesterday that don't, I'm going to warn you, have the best visual quality, but we will get through it together. Hold my hand while we look at Frilled Caveworm, Primordial Gnawer, and we might as well throw in a Razka Puzzle Door from this morning. A Frilled Caveworm, FC Dubs, is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 2/5 Salamander Worm. Nice. It has Descend 4. As long as you have 4 permanent cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+0. So, well, 4 mana, 4/5 vanilla guy. It's limited playable, maybe. I don't even know about that. So let's move on to Primordial Gnawer, 5 mana this time, 4 and a black for a 5/2 Insect Horror. When it dies, discover 3. So it leaves a little dude behind, probably going to trade in combat, but might trade with like a 2-drop if it decides to swing. I don't like this guy either. Let's move on. So let's move on to a slightly more interesting card than the last two. There has to be a neat card on the first slide somewhere, and it's a Razka Puzzle Door. If you thought the Lord of the Rings references were going to stop just because we printed a whole Lord of the Rings set, I guess you were wrong. This is a single blue mana for an artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it to look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand, the other into your graveyard. I want to like this so much, and I'm probably going to end up talking myself into it, because as far as eggs go, this is okay. You know, it's just a single mana to cast, a single mana to activate. You crack it, something good happens. You get like a semi-anticipate effect. You can use it at instant speed. It's an artifact in the meantime. I mean, there's some cool things about this, and limited. It puts 2 towards your descend count once you do crack it, because you get an artifact and something else in there. So, I don't know, could be okay there, but I don't think it does too much outside of limited. There's always the idea that, like, it's an artifact, so you do stuff with that, but, like, I'm not sure that even the standard artifact decks that want a bunch of artifacts end up with this. I could be wrong, though. I could especially be wrong considering that a lot of the standard decks that do want artifacts and play blue also play stuff like Omen Hawker and Tezzeret and other things that can reduce activated ability costs. So you just play this for 1 and you can effectively use its ability for free. That's a lot more attractive. So the card could actually be decent in very specific decks. Let's take a tiny step up now, I guess, and look at Basking Capybara. It's kind of neat. We get a capybara, but we also got to see Watley's Final Strike and Zoetic Glyph. A Basking Capybara is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/3 Capybara with Descend 4. As long as you got 4 permanents in your yard, this thing gets +3/+0. So 2 mana, 4/3 with a little bit of legwork, you know. I'm not sure that this makes it into the standard, like, Lurgoyf's Plus deck anytime soon, but it does have decent stats and it trades well in combat and stuff like that. So it's on the edge, but that deck got so many good things that I'm pretty sure that keeping it to 60 cards is going to involve cutting this thing at some point. But in limited, maybe, you know, a little green-black Descend thing, a 2 mana, 4/3 is going to be pretty good in that environment. Watley's Final Strike is just some nice little limited removal for your green deck. It's 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 till end of turn. Deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So a bite effect, always way, way better than a fight effect. And you get a little boost while you're at it. Why not, right? So cool thing, especially the instant speed. Sometimes these are sorcery speed, which makes them suck slightly more, but since you can do this like in combat and in response to stuff, is way, way better. So I do like it, but you know, 3 mana is basically priced out of any standard play. That said, you know, green decks will take whatever limited removal they can get, and like, this is a pretty good piece. Now, Zoetic Glyph, look, I know that we talked about this on stream the other night, so like 60 people have seen me talk about this card, but it ended up getting cut from the YouTube video that I ended up making from that stream, and I kind of felt bad because it's a neat card, so let's go over it real quick. It is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants artifacts. Enchanted Artifact is a golem creature with base power and toughness 5/4 in addition to its other types. When Zoetic Glyph is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, discover 3. Speaking of the streams, I got to give credit to somebody in chat because they suggested putting this on Diamond Pickaxe, the like indestructible 1-drop equipment, and just make it like a 5/4 indestructible on turn 3. That is thinking with your noodle. That you should be a content creator, friend, but one way or the other. This is kind of neat because, yeah, you can get like map tokens, treasure tokens, whatever. Just whatever garbage little artifact that you get for free value in the set. And then for 3 mana, it becomes a 5/4. And then when the thing inevitably dies to removal, like it's probably going to, right? Then at least like this pays you back a little bit. They pushed it slightly, you know. If you can actually stick this to something, then it greatly mitigates like the inherent disadvantage of being an aura. Because, you know, in case you're new around here, if you do stick an aura to a thing and they end up removing the thing that you stuck the aura to, well, you lost not only the thing, but also the aura. So you kind of got 2 for 1. Against 1-for-1 removal. And that always kind of feels bad, right? Well, it's going to pay you back at least something. It's going to give you a spell or something off the top of your library when it does go to the graveyard. So if your opponent does target the 5/4 with removal, which they are, you know, they probably want to do that, and at least you get something. So I think it's a neatly designed card, and there's probably some like slightly cool but not quite broken stuff you can do with it. You know, while we're here, we might as well talk about Waterlogged Hulk and Watertight Gondola from yesterday. This is a single blue mana for an artifact. You can tap it to mill yourself 1. Okay. You can also craft with Island for 3 and a blue and get Watertight Gondola. This is an artifact, which is a vehicle. It's a 4/4 Vigilance, Crew 1. Descend 8. Watertight Gondola can't be blocked as long as there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. You know, when I first saw this yesterday, I was kind of like, whatever. But the more I think about it, the more it intrigues me, right? I mean, 1 mana gets you started on turn 1, and I like cards like that. Go ahead and start milling yourself, whatever. It kind of works towards its own descend payment later in the game, you know. You mill yourself a few before you actually craft it, and then suddenly you're really close to 8 permanents in your yard. But also I like the fact that you can just like craft it with an island that's in your graveyard, right? If you're milling yourself, you're likely to hit an island depending on how many are in the deck. Plus, it's not crafted like a basic island. You know, you can craft it with like a triome or something so long as it's got an island type, so that's kind of neat too. That's cool. You don't have to necessarily pull yourself down on lands in play to craft this. I see a lot of people saying that, but no, you can just craft it with 1 in your graveyard. But you don't have to do that. You can craft it with 1 in play, and you still got a 4 mana 4/4 unblockable in the relative mid to late game, depending on how hard it is to hit Descend 8. But unblockability is actually really sweet. So I don't think this is an amazing card, but I think we're like verging on sleeper territory a bit here. I see like literally 0 people taking it seriously, and I mean, I definitely get why, but the craft cost is actually relatively low, both in terms of what you have to craft it with and the actual mana cost compared to a lot of other craft things. So it does something pretty decent on like both halves of the card. The crew cost is extremely low. I don't know. I think there's something there. But while we're looking at craftable stuff, sure, let's throw in Kaslam Stone Tree. This thing actually looks kind of neat. It's 3 mana, 2 and a green for an artifact. When it ETBs, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, but the rest on the bottom in a random order. You can craft it with Cave for 5 and a green. That means you get a Kaslam Strider when you do that. It's a 5/5, and that's it. It's an artifact creature. It's a golem. It's 5/5 vanilla guy. Actually, kind of not horrible. First of all, if you'll note, it doesn't say basic land. You look at the top 6, put any land you want to onto the battlefield. Like, okay, so that makes it like slightly better in a lot of ways than like your typical 3 mana ramper. So let's move on to Skipping Explorer if you like ramp cards. This is 4 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature, which is a gnome. And when it ETBs, you search your library for a basic land card or a cave card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Halfway decent for the cave decks, but it might actually be halfway decent for other decks too. You know, I remember old Quandrix Cultivator from a few years ago was actually like halfway decent in standard for a year, and then the other half of the time he was in standard, he wasn't actually good anymore. But we won't talk about that. There was a point in time where Quandrix Cultivator was a playable magic card, right? So I hope I'm naming the guy correctly. He's a 4 mana Simic dude, gets a land. We'll see in editing if I did it right or not, but one way or the other. This guy's 4 mana, go get a land. Okay. You know, could be worse. He's going to trade in combat with something. That's not too bad either. So in this case, he can't die to go for the throne. Okay. He's going to trade with their Graveyard Trespasser too. So I don't know. I kind of don't hate this dude in standard. A 4 mana body with a decent power toughness that goes and gets a land. Okay. But for the cave decks, especially going and getting whatever cave that you need for that situation, like even better. So I kind of like this dude more than I reasonably should, I think. Let's check out Fanatical Offering next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Draw 2 cards and create a map token. All right, so a lot of people freaking out about this today because Deadly Dispute was a card that existed a couple of years ago, and everyone's like, it's Deadly Dispute. It's not. I'm sorry, guys. It's not Deadly Dispute. You know, it doesn't actually ramp you in any way, right? And the map tokens are sorcery speed activations, and they cost 1 to activate 2, and I don't know, man. I will say, in Limited, at the very least, and I'll get back to Standard in a second, but in Limited, the Sacrifice deck really wants to also be able to sacrifice artifacts, right? You can sacrifice artifacts to Bartholomew as well, and a couple of other cards in the set care about artifacts being sacrificed, so it's nice this gives you the ability to do that too. And in Standard, that might matter as well, right? They kind of play well with copies of one another because you sacrifice something to the first one that gives you a map token, and that makes it a lot easier to cast subsequent copies because you sacrificed the map token the first one gave you, you know, so, and then on and on. So I don't know, there could be something here, and a map token is actually pretty decent value, but I'm just not gonna sit here and tell you that it's Deadly Dispute. It's absolutely not. Now, they're not giving us quite enough Ixalan art for me to use as backgrounds in these videos this time around, so here's some Kaya Folio art. It's very pretty. Let's look at some removal and a kind of neat card. It's a Braid. We get a reprint of a Braid. Ooh. There's also Malicious Eclipse and Canonized in Blood. A Braid is a Braid. You know what it does. 2 mana instant, costs 1 and a red. You can either deal 3 damage to a creature or you can like blow up an artifact. That's what it does. It's in Standard right now, but I guess once it rotates, and they thought it would rotate, but it didn't rotate because they decided not to do the rotation. So now a Braid's going to be in Standard forever, basically. So if you're annoyed by a Braid being in Standard, whatever, who cares? It's still in Standard. Should play around a Braid in main decks in best of 1. It's fine. It's a good card. But Malicious Eclipse is kind of interesting. It's hard to catch how this is slightly different than some of the other versions we've seen of it, but let's take a look at it. It's 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 till end of turn. If a creature an opponent controls would die this turn, exile it instead. You catch it? You catch it? If a creature an opponent controls would die this turn, exile it instead. Ha ha! So I get to keep my skeletons and my tenacious underdogs and my zombies that come back from the graveyard. I can keep all that stuff. That's so cool, man. Like, that's actually pretty neat. I like this. It's right up there with Cry of the Carnarium. It's actually better than Cry of the Carnarium, man. It's just really neat that they gave you that concession. You know, they really understand in some ways. These like aristocrats decks and stuff like that really sometimes want a piece like this in the sideboard, and I'll just sacrifice all my guys anyway. But please don't put that line of text on the card. Please just don't do it. Don't put the line of text on the card that exiles my guys. And they decided to work around it this time, and I really like it. Cool beans. It's a good card, and it actually might end up in Standard sideboards from time to time. These tend to be good effects. Canonized in Blood, I'm pretty sure isn't actually very good at all, but it's very cool, so let's look at it. It's 2 mana, 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Again, you descended if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. You can also pay 5 and 2 black and sacrifice Canonized in Blood to create a 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. So 7 mana is like so much for a 4/3 flyer. So I'm pretty sure this is actually one of those enchantments that looks awesome, but it's like only limited playable and nothing else. An extra +1/+1 counter every turn. Ooh, and that's like only if you descended, right? And that's easier than it seems, right, to descend. And sometimes this is going to pay you back for like your 1/1 or 2 power dude going to the graveyard during combat. Like, oh, something else gets a +1/+1 counter. So I actually think this might be like more of a headache than I'm currently judging it as, but I still don't think that it's worth 2 mana in most Standard decks, to be honest. But it is a neat looking card, and I think it's somewhat playable and limited. Let's move on to the weirdest card of the day. Wins that award. They're printing a lot of those cards in this set, to be honest. But in this case, I can no longer find this card on any of the spoiler sites, which is kind of weird. But I have to trust that Contested Game Ball actually exists and wasn't some kind of fever dream that I had. It's just 2 mana in my dream for an artifact. Whenever you're dealt combat damage, the attacking player gains control of Contested Game Ball and then untaps it. You can also pay 2 and tap the ball to draw a card and put a point counter on Game Ball. Then, if it has 5 or more point counters on it, sacrifice it and create a treasure token. It's very weird. It's a weird magic card. The weirdest Maze Mind Tome you've ever seen. You know, I guess the last thing that they printed that was like a Maze Mind Tome, Reckless Bankbuster, they had to ban that card. So like, let's print a really bad one. What if we made one that was awful? So I guess if you're never dealt combat damage, then like you get to eventually, you know, draw just a buttload of cards. And then I guess get a treasure token. You know, I guess that's actually pretty good in a way, but it's still not actually very good, in fact, at all. So I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I see cards like Reckless Bank Buster. I'm like, okay, so draw cards, get treasure tokens, are pretty good, but like they can get it, and that's terrible. That's really bad. So, I mean, I guess it's a way to have some fun in a game of Magic, but it's also like just kind of silly Billy stuff. So I don't know. If you spend mana on your turn 2 playing this card, and then also if you spend mana activating it, that's creatures you are not playing. So that is combat damage you are more likely to take, and they're going to take your ball away, and nobody wants that. So I'm just not like super convinced about this thing, honestly. If you can like get it back and then hit a sweeper somehow, seems good. But again, like the deck that wants to hit a sweeper is going to play this on turn 2. They're going to take your ball. You're going to hit the sweeper, and they're still going to have your ball. So they can like draw cards to recover from the sweeper. I don't know. I'm really talking myself out of this thing. It just seems kind of not amazing, but yes, fun, and fun is important. Let's check out Itzkint, Firstborn of Gishath next. This is just a red and a green for a 2/3 legendary dinosaur with haste. And when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, target dinosaur you control deals damage to target creature equal to its power. I think this goes pretty well on curve with like whatever his name is, Hammer Skull. I think that's the guy's name. He's the 3 mana 6/6 that we saw earlier in the set. So if you get that guy on turn 3, and then this dude on turn 4, you pay the mana for him, you are taking something down. Like, pretty much guaranteed. So this dude goes well with a bunch of dinosaurs, because dinosaurs tend to have like pretty meaty power, right? And dinosaurs also needed a pretty decent, not embarrassing 2-drop again. It already had like one decent one, but now it's actually starting to become a deck. You know, you can play 8 total 2-drop dinosaurs in this deck, even though this guy's legendary. That's kind of problematic, right? But still, I think you do play extra copies of him, because even if you have a copy in play, maybe you're going to want to use his Enter the Battlefield trigger anyway. Last thing about this guy real quick, though, he does have haste, and that's something I haven't really paid that much attention to until just now. 2 mana 2-power haste guys sometimes just see play based on that merit, if nothing else. And lately, the 2 mana 2-power haste guys have been getting a lot of gravy, like Charming Scoundrel and Bloodthirsty Adversary. This is the next in a long line, man. He's a 2 mana 2-power haste dude that actually has halfway decent toughness in this case. You can't say that for most of them. And if you got a little bit of extra mana in your pocket late in the game, he's going to come down and just like eat something. So that's also good. A decent guy. Let's move on then to Anim Pikal, the 1000th Moon, another multicolored legend. This one is 1, a red, and a white for a 1/2 legendary human soldier. Whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on Anim Pikal, the 1000th Moon, then create X colorless 1/1 gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pikal. This sounds familiar. So yeah, I want to say that this is Krenko at home, but actually Krenko is this guy at home now. You know, this is 2 colors in your commander deck. I guess that's twice as good, theoretically. That's how the math checks out. But also, and more importantly, this guy doesn't have to actually attack to get the bonus, which is kind of incredible, you know? Like, even in standard. Yeah, I'm talking standard here, baby. I know it looks like a 3 mana 1/2, get it out of my face. But the turn it comes down, if you can attack with a non-gnome, I guess it has to not be a gnome, that seems pretty easy to engineer, then suddenly this thing gets a +1/+1 counter, and you get another point of power toughness on the board in the form of a gnome. So it's kind of a 3 mana 3/4 on the turn that you play it if you can attack, and then it's just going to get even bigger and better and put more stuff on the board if it survives a turn, and God forbid 2 turns. It's really start cranking them out, especially if you have other ways of putting +1/+1 counters on it. Then suddenly it just kind of gets out of hand the next turn when you untap and Homestead Courage twice and go to attack with something and get like 3 gnomes. Like, absolutely unbelievable. I think this card has the potential to be in some standard piles. I'm not sure that it quite gets there, but like, I'm not going to put it past the card either. I think it might have some potential, but obviously in Commander, if you're a fan of Krenko, now you just get a better one. Krenko goes in the 99 of this now, does he? No, he's probably just in the 99 of like Goblins decks. So I don't know what we do with old Cranky Pants now, but this is just a much, much better version of a card that people already kind of loved. It doesn't make Goblins, which I know will disappoint some of you, but I still think it's awesome. And finally, just so nobody trips me up, because I know somebody will say it in the comments section, you don't have to erase the comment. I know you've already made it, but yeah, I know that you get tokens equal to Krenko's power. In this, you get tokens equal to the number of +1/+1 counters. Those are different lines of text. Krenko could technically be better, right? Especially with the Anthem effects. But yeah, you've made a good point there. You are correct. But I still think this is altogether much better than Krenko. But anyway, love ya. Let's go ahead and move on. So we got to look at Abuelo's Awakening next. This is actually kind of exciting. It's 4 base mana, 3 and a white, but then you pay X for a sorcery. Return target artifact or non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. 4 mana, Portal to Phyrexia out of my graveyard. Let's go, kid. That seems actually... it's kind of decent in and of itself. I mean, if a Zombify for artifacts and enchantments at a base level is cool, but if you have the mana to scale it, it just does scale. So you get a big old artifact or like an Omniscience for 4 mana out of your graveyard. I guess you can do that too. But your Omniscience can also be like a 4/4 flyer. So that seems okay. And you like cast protection spells for free out of your hand. Seems like you're having a great time, Sally. But also just in standard, man, again, I'll go back to Portal to Phyrexia. Turn 2 or 3, you dump that in your yard, and then turn 4, you're picking it out. It's a 1/1 spirit. They can just blow it up, but I guess they can't go for the throated, which might matter, but they can also just counter your 4 mana play with a cut down. So there's counterplay. That doesn't mean that this is bad though necessarily. Again, love the scalability on this. If you don't get it on turn 4, if you're not able to dump a thing in the yard by then, and so you have to cast it on turn 5 or 6, suddenly you get a little bit of payback for that. And then if you rip it off the top of your library in the late game, then suddenly anything you return from your graveyard is going to be kind of formidable when you spent like 8 mana on this. So I don't know, man. They didn't even have to give you the scalability. It's kind of fine without that. But just the fact that you can pump more mana into this, I think makes it a phenomenal spell. But it was already kind of okay. You know, if they can't answer the portal, then like they're kind of done. Even if they can't answer the portal, they still had to sacrifice the 3 dudes when it came into play. So like, I think this is actually a super dangerous card for standard that could end up seeing some play. Now, I know we looked at some removal earlier, but let's look at the best removal spell of the set. It's Bitter Triumph here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. It says that on the card. It's ridiculous. 2 mana. 2 manas. Now, I know that some of the time, and when I say some of the time, I think like 72% of the time, it's going to be worse Infernal Grasp. Okay? And Infernal Grasp doesn't even really see play in standard. Not that much anymore. People just play like Go for the Throat, maybe like a 1-of Infernal Grasp. You see Shieldred's Edict every now and again. Some cut downs. You know, the removal is pretty varied in a lot of black decks at this point. And I'm not sure this actually gets slotted directly in, but it probably takes the place of Infernal Grasp. I think a lot of the time, if you're comfortable paying 2 life, you're probably comfortable paying 3, especially if you also have the ability to blow up a Planeswalker, which is a huge addition to a card like Infernal Grasp. This is really good point-and-click removal, and some of the time, you know I'm going to say it. What's Dev's favorite thing? I like to reanimate big, fat boys and ladies, too. I don't really discriminate in that department, so I just like to reanimate things. So obviously, blow up your guy, don't lose any life, and just discard my Toxrill or whatever for later reanimation. That's ridiculous. Yes, I know that it sounds like I'm 2 for 1-ing myself, but mono black like Reanimator is getting so many pieces in this set, dude. Like, I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of months that I've wanted, really more than that, that I've wanted to build a sort of mono black Reanimator pile, but mono black only has like Liliana, the 3 mana one, to discard cards. And it's kind of lame. You just don't have enough outlets, right? So you have to play another color. But we have seen so many cool things in this set that allow you to like filter in black. And this is easily the best piece that we've seen that does that if you're trying to discard stuff into your yard, period. And like, even if you're not going to reanimate it with a piece later, like Cruelty of Gix, you can always just discard a Tenacious Underdog, raise your last Transmogrant, get it back later, whatever. So just kind of a ridiculous piece without ever having to spend life on it. But some of the time, if it's like, oh, that Planeswalker is going to take over the game, I'll pay 3 life to deal with it at 2 mana. Like, yeah, that's also a sweet deal, especially if they're playing a bunch of Planeswalkers, because it probably means they aren't pressuring your life total that much. I'll pay 3 life against a control deck to blow up your Walker. This card is absolutely ridiculous. And I know that in like best of 1, you're punished for putting this in your deck because you're going to come up against mono red, and it's not good against that, and that's the whole reason people don't play Infernal Grasp. I'm like, look, I get your point, and it's a solid one, but I still think this card is kind of stupid and it's going to see some play, but let's move on. To the final card of the day, at least from what I have so far on Mythic Spoiler, it's Hulking Raptor. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 5/3 Dino with Ward 2. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add a couple of green mana to your pool. Now, despite what everybody says, you can get this the turn it comes into play. Yesterday, I was talking about the Moon Smithy or whatever it's called, and I was like, you can get this the turn it comes into play too. And everyone's like, no, you can't, Dev. It says pre-combat main phase. Fools, unimaginative, uncreative fools who have never flashed anything in on their upkeep step. How come? How dare you question? Anyway, I guess you could do the same thing with this and flash it in on your opponent's end step, and then it pays you back nearly immediately. Just untap, draw, here's some mana. But still, you're not going to be doing that most of the time. I recognize that you're going to be playing this and then waiting a turn with your fingers crossed to hope that you get your mana. But if you do, a lot of mana. You can have 7 mana if you drop a land that turn, theoretically, at least. So, seems great, especially considering the body is pretty hard in the first place for the mana that you're putting into it. All right, we've done our reload on Mythic Spoiler here, and I don't see any new cards, although what I do see all day for the last few days is ads that cover the entire page. So I just want to say to Mythic Spoiler, I support your site. I love you very much. Couldn't do my job without you. Also, stop that. But one thing I do want to talk about before we get out of here, because we got some extra time, don't we? Sure, all of the videos have been an hour this spoiler season. Who cares? So let's talk about some cards from the Commander release that I really liked. Now, we could go through all of these, but there are so many. It would take another 2 hours or whatever to do that. So let's just highlight 5 cards that I really liked from today. First, I saw Skeleton Crew and got very excited. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/3 Skeleton Pirate. Each other creature you control that's a skeleton or a pirate gets +1/+1. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black skeleton creature pirate token, I guess, sure. And then also for 6 mana, 5 and a black, return Skeleton Crew from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it just keeps coming back like a skeleton should. It's a little anthem effect for your skeletons. We don't get enough of those. I'm always happy about those. And it makes skeletons. It's good in your pirates deck too. Your Grixis Pirates Commander pile or whatever you're trying to do. So yeah, man, huge fan of this just because it's a skeleton anthem effect. We've already seen a skeleton anthem effect that I kind of freaked out about this spoiler season, and even though this one's Commander specific, I don't care. Still love it. Gonna order it for the Mono Black Cube. Think it's awesome. We also got Elena's Hierophant today. This thing is hype. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 1/1 flying vampire cleric. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Elena's Hierophant. When Hierophant dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Hierophant's power. This is busted. Like, I see people, say this is a Johnny's Pride made on steroids, but it's actually like even better Bloodthirsty Aerialist for the exact same mana value, but a much better mana cost. So easy to cast. And it already has some of the text that Aerialist has, although a slightly lower base power toughness, but who's counting, right? So I already love Aerialist. This is just a million times better, man. If you can gain life a few times and this thing has 6 power, that is so easy. Then suddenly, not only do you get a bunch of dudes when it dies, but they all have lifelink too. Good. Woo! Yeah, this probably was a little bit too powerful for standard, but I would have loved a lifelink or life gain payoff like this in standard, but this is a pretty ridiculous card. It's going directly into cubes everywhere, including my own, and it's a pretty sick commander card for life gain decks, so I wanted to point it out. We also got From the Rubble today. This thing is ridiculous. 6 mana, 4 and 2 white for an enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. At the beginning of your end step, return target creature type of the chosen type from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So you can't keep reanimating the same thing over and over, but still, you kind of get a Virtue of Persistence or Portal to Phyrexia or one of these things that's creature type specific for 6 mana. That's a really good effect. I shouldn't have to point that out to you. And I love how it's not Dinosaur specific. I'm pretty sure it's in the Dinosaur deck, but it's not Dinosaur specific. So a lot of different commander decks that play creature types are going to want this thing. It's just really, really sweet card to have existing. I wanted to let you know that it does. Next to last thing of the day is March of the Canonized. This is 2 white and X for an enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, if your devotion to white and black is 7 or greater, create a 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. I basically like any effect that's some mana cost an X to create a bunch of dorky tokens. I tend to really like those sort of open-ended, how much mana you got, kid? Put it all on the table. How much money you got, you know? And we'll just give you as much as we have for your value. I just like those generally, but the fact that they have lifelink, a relevant creature type, and vampire, that's really awesome. And then eventually, you're just going to get a 4/3 flyer every turn. Okay, you know, it's just tokens on tokens, man. You're going to give me a fistful of tokens when I play the card, and then turn after turn, you're going to give me big tokens that fly too. So just like, yeah, sweet card. I think it's commander playable till the end of time too, because your devotion to white and black being 7 seems very, very easy to achieve. So just a free 4/3, even if you only play this on turn 2 for a couple of mana, don't get a single freaking token out of it, it kind of still seems okay in eventuality. So sweet card is all I'm saying. But man, you want a sweet card? I bet you do. You'll know that like most of these cards that I'm pointing out come from the same deck, so you can guess which commander product I'm buying this year. Let's look at Master of Dark Rites, a single black mana for a 1/1 vampire cleric. You can tap it and sacrifice another creature to add 3 black mana to your mana pool. You see what they're doing? Spend this mana only to cast vampire, cleric, and or demon spells. Look, I feel like I should be able to cast like horror and nightmare spells. Like, there's some creature types missing, but you can't just throw them all on there, right? Still, I think this is a really sweet card because it's Dark Ritual on legs. Come on, man. It's crazy. I think that even like not necessarily creature type specific commander decks might want to play this thing because, you know, sometimes you want to sacrifice guys. It's a thing that aristocrats decks just want to do as a matter of course anyway. Why not get 3 black mana? You know, what is it? Priest of Forgotten Rites or whatever it's called. The thing that like you tap, you sacrifice a guy, they sacrifice a guy, you get 2 black mana, you draw a card. Like that dude's awesome. People still play that in Commander like nuts, and for good reason. It's a really, really good card. And even though this does restrict some of the things that you can actually play with that mana, it's still like sacrifice a dude and get all the death triggers in the world from your Blood Artist type dudes and all that stuff, and maybe bring them back and cycle them, whatever, you know, like do all the stuff you get in it as an advantage for sacrificing a dude, and then also 3 mana. It's like, God, it's crazy. It just seems so nuts to me, dude. Like, cast Dark Ritual by sacrificing a guy is not only the best flavor, but it also seems really powerful to an old head like me, for whom Dark Ritual is like one of my favorite cards of all time. So love the reference, love the flavor, even love the sort of restrictive nature of the card because it makes a lot of sense. So this card needed to exist. I didn't know that until I saw it, but like here we are, and I'm glad that it's a part of Magic now, is all I'm saying. But that is Itsky Lewitsky, all of the cards from today, and even some Commander stuff that I really didn't mind covering at all. I might do more of that later. But anyway, like I said earlier, we got like one more day, I think, of spoilers left here. There's 33 cards left to uncover in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I'm pretty sure they're just going to dump them all on us tomorrow morning. We will sift through those and pick all the best cards that actually look they might be some shade of playable. We'll present those to you, but don't leave the channel. Make sure you subscribe because this is where the good content starts, right? We got to rank every single card in the set on Twitch. That will end up on YouTube. It's always a lot of fun for you guys. Not so sure about me, but we're also going to do our top 25 cards in the set, our top 10 sleepers, which is my favorite video, deck techs, obviously, and all kinds of stuff. So make sure you sub to the channel so you get all the content because this is where I do my best work, right around here. But in any case, like the video if you enjoyed it, sub to the sandwich, check out the Twitch where we'll be doing the things. Obviously, not only will be doing the ranking every card, but I'll be doing early access this year. So if you want to see like dinosaurs and aristocrats, those are probably the 2 things I'm going to be doing night 1. Just come on by the streams and check us out. It's free to follow over there on Patreon. It is $1 a month to support us, but that's all I'm really asking for over there. And if you do me that $1 a month, you can vote on what decks we do first. So do you want to see dinosaurs first in a deck tech? Or do you want to see aristocrats first in a deck tech? You get to vote. Fight over it for $1 a month on patreon.com. Supports the channel a lot. Like, so we're pretty much more than anything else that I do. Patreon really helps out a lot, so I'd appreciate it. But aside from that, I'm basically done with the spiel for now. So I'll catch you cats later. Just let me know how you felt about all the stuff in the comment section down there. There was some good cards today, especially if you're a Commander player. It was a great day for you. But in any case, I'm basically done over this one, so I'll see you guys later. I'm Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.